And welcome back, everyone, to the latest anime news for the week ending August 15th, 2020. That's right, it is 2020. He said as he tried to pull up the document real quick. Let us begin with news from Studio MAPPA, the studio behind Yuri on Ice and Zombieland Saga, which has a new original series in the works, and we will not have long to wait. Yay! Announced during this week's Seiyu to Yo Asobi program, the new sports anime is titled Taiso Samurai or Gymnastics Samurai, and is set to debut on October 10th, which is not that far away. As you might have guessed, the story centers on a gymnastics team, specifically the once powerful Japanese men's gymnastics team. It's set back in 2002, and it follows Shotaro Aragaki, a former member of the team who, despite still training strenuously every day, is no longer able to compete to his expectations. I wonder what'll happen. His coach advises him to retire, but a certain encounter takes place and changes his fate. So far, it sounds like a pretty classic sports anime, and if Yuri on Ice is anything to go by, MAPPA can definitely make a popular sports anime. Main staff members who work together on Zombieland Saga are returning for this project, including director Hisatoshi Shimizu, series scriptwriter Shigeru Murakoshi, and character designer Kasumi Fukugawa. So my question is, what on earth does a sports anime that looks like Zombieland Saga look like?
Didn't MAPPA do BNA, Brand New Animal?
I think so.
So I'm just trying to wrap my skull around a gymnastics anime that looks like that.
Mm-hmm.
Which BNA was, I mean, it had a lot of, kinetic action. It had, the typical MAPPA, palette of colors. So I don't see probably that it's going to be all that different looking than just that. I mean, that because I think BNA was last season.
Yeah.
Or the earlier winter season this 2019, 2020. So I imagine it's going to have that same sort of look.
Fair enough, yeah. I'm kind of curious as to whether this was planned around the Olympics.
Had to have been.
Yeah, and I would imagine.
And if so, if it was originally going to have premiered around the Olympics but got delayed because of COVID, they're like, okay, well, let's just make it anyway,
Well, if it's ready to go, then it was probably done for the Olympics.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. Which is, I mean, they've delayed the Olympics to 2021. Like, so, it's interesting. Interesting in a sad kind of way, because it's like you could imagine people being like, okay, we're set. We got the premiere set. The games are going to begin. And as soon as it happens, we're going to release this and we're going to ride that wave. And now it's like, well, we got to release it. We've spent all this money and all this time. We're not anywhere near this.
We've had so many different things go wrong on other different shows, but nothing stops the Olympics.
Yeah. Ever since post-war, it's been good to go, regardless of what's going on in the world. Oh, yeah, here we are now.
2020.
Just imagine all the poor programmers who have to code all this stuff and just set something up for 4 years after this thing.
Yeah.
And like, oh great, now I'm gonna have this one exception for this 1 year where nothing lines up.
Yeah, that's what happened to my theater. That's what happened to my theater. First of all, COVID happened in the middle of our season, so we had an entire season that we were trying to figure out what to do, and then finally we just gave up and canceled everything. Now we're looking at 2021, and we're not even sure that they're going to have a season for 2021.
Wow!
And so but the thing of it is that more to the point of the production, you have money that's involved. So these things have involved. So imagine all the contracts and all the merchandising and the licensing and all that stuff for this anime, and then suddenly they're like, oh yeah, sorry about the Olympics. So
you're not going to have a giant pool of people right here, right now for the Olympics that are going to be merch hungry. Now, like, all the Airbnbs, all those cancellations, everybody's looking at loss of income and trying to figure out, how can we circle up the wagons now that this isn't happening?
And they're not even allowing people into the country. right? Like it's not even like, oh well, tourists will come. No, they won't.
Yeah, there are no tourists. Well, except for a handful of countries. Like I can't even imagine the exhaustive list. It's trying to find the countries that you can go to Japan from.
But those poor guys, those poor folks who made this anime, they're like sitting there just like what we did in the theater, which is this like, hey, we made this wonderful thing to be seen, and we were hoping for this audience this big, and now your audience is suddenly this big, if it exists at all, and you're just throwing it online, and then all the animators, all the voice actors, and all that stuff are just like going. At least I got.
Yep.
Yeah, but it's their art that's not getting the exposure that they had hoped, and that really sucks. I feel that.
Yeah.
While this is not an anime that would have appealed to me necessarily, I'm feeling for the people involved with it, and how this has to happen for them. Yeah,
it's rough. For it. Absolutely. But that's not the only new anime on the list. Bandai Namco has officially announced the anime associated with their new franchise, Saikyo Kamizmode. The franchise was announced back in July and is planned to include a rhythm card arcade game, the new hotness, as well as the anime project. The franchise has the main themes of sumo, taiko drumming, and music. Characters will have both a sumo and a kamizmode that they can switch between at will, and will battle to become a yokozuna, which is the highest rank one can achieve in sumo wrestling. Both the anime and the arcade game are set to premiere this fall, with the anime playing on YouTube and Tokyo MX. The question, though, is, Steve, are you in?
That's how I'm going to die. I'm going to be on that game.
As a sumo taiko drummer?
As a sumo taiko drummer, and you're going to see me going and do it because I love that. Sumo wrestling and those drums, I love that. And you're going to see me pounding away on those drums, and then suddenly the sticks are going to drop, and you're going to be going, I did what I loved.
What is, it's not a fundoshi, is it a washi? Is it the sumo belt that the sumo wrestlers wear? What is it called?
Good question. It's definitely fundoshi-esque, but it's not.
Yeah, but I thought it's a washi, but I don't know what that. I'm not sure whether that's just a name I
washi
made
paper,
up.
So I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
I'm sure there's a word for it.
It's a Mawashi.
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 Are you going to be allowed to play this in the arcade wearing that?
Sure. Why not?
I bet. I bet I won't be allowed to play it in the arcade wearing. I'd be like, no, not you. Get out.
Some of us will not be allowed.
Yeah.
That won't be a thing.
That's just an interesting card game arcade rhythm taiko sumo.
Yeah.
I'm in.
Did somebody drink too much and hit their head? Where did this come from?
So here's what I think it is. Sumo wrestling is having issues getting audience.
Okay. Right.
And so somebody said, how do we appeal to the young people? They go to the video games, don't they? Let's do a video game.
They do the magical talking box thing, right?
The show almost came out of my nose. That was hilarious.
23 Skidoo. Here we go. Ye oldie timey video games. Okay.
And also, in fairness, like those taiko drumming arcade games are popular. Rhythm games are popular.
I've seen them play. That looks fun.
Mm-hmm.
But sumo taiko, where does the card game come in? I mean, is that just
that's a good question. So I'm assuming it's either
Power Up.
Yeah. I'm assuming it's either one of two things. Either like there is a card element to it where like, you're dealt 3 cards and they have abilities, whatever. Or like, you are earning cards that go on like the Gundam games have like an ID card that you bring in and like you can put your pilot data on it. So you could like earn cards that go on your token, which then you take back home and you do, who knows.
That's funky.
Yeah. It was one of those things where I'm like, this is unusual, but I'm very curious to see how it goes, because it's not one of those things where we decided to make a sumo arcade game. Oh no, We're gonna throw like 3 things in the pot here, and stir it up and see what happens. Like
Whatever sticks, we're gonna go with it.
I'll be the first one to try it at Otakon, and
Yeah.
I'll never do it.
absolutely. This is also not the only anime today. Bandai Namco, a new television anime is in the works for the comedy franchise Himitsu Kesha Taka no Tsume, or Secret Society Eagle Talon. The new Secret Society Eagle Talon Golden Spell anime will premiere on October 4th, with production by DLE Inc. Voice actor Joji Nakata will join the cast for the new series. As in the previous Eagle Talon iterations, all of the voices will be performed by Frogman, who is also the series director, script supervisor, scriptwriter, character designer, and editor. So this is a very specific concept. The original Eagle Talon Flash anime centers on the titular Secret Society and its rather bumbling attempts at world takeover. DLE launched the first TV series in 2006, which spawned 9 films, and has 7 anime seasons so far, not including the upcoming one. I believe those are all Flash. Interestingly, the very first legally authorized anime Crunchyroll ever streamed was an Eagle Talon short back in 2008. The story of the new anime series begins when Eagle Talon discovers a secret spell that can control people's will with a single word. However, the spell and the program that is developing it are stolen. The series will continue to comment on current events in a comedic way, including a recent news item related to the coronavirus and working from home. Unlike previous iterations where each episode was standalone, the story arc of the new series will unfold across its whole 12-episode run. Flash animation? Flash animation?
I'm not crazy about the Flash animation, but I think I'll buy into it and watch it.
Sure.
This sounds up my alley. If it's along the lines of like Milk Chan and Shin-chan, then I'll probably watch it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. And when I say Flash animation, that is not a negative. It is just that is the first time I've heard something coming out of a Flash animation in a very long time. Like, I thought the era of Flash adaptations was gone, but apparently, my gosh.
Well, if you're a one person show, which it sounds like it really is,
Got a point.
you go with I guess what you're most easily familiar with, and apparently it would be the Flash animation style.
Yeah, totally.
Interesting.
Wow.
I'll give it a go.
I'm going to presume that given that format, it's going to be another like 3 to 5 minutes. Probably 3. As a one-person show, probably 3 is going to be about as much as you're going to be able to crank out. But yeah.
Considering they just added their first voice actor, that kind of tells you something.
Yeah.
Wow. Last up in new anime this week, a series of anime shorts made in partnership with Minamishimabara. That's a lot of syllables. City in Nagasaki Prefecture. Director Okamoto has partnered with Triff Studio and Minamishimabara to produce a 4-episode series of shorts set in the city titled Shiro the Giant and the Castle of Ice. The first 1.5 long episode premiered this week on YouTube with subtitles in English and simplified Chinese. The rest of the series will be released gradually between now and December. Okamoto serves as character designer and production manager as well as director, so another series with a lot of parts being run by one person. For such a short series, the voice cast is pretty impressive, with several well-known voice actors playing roles. These include Yoshitsugu Matsuoka, who voices Kirito from Sword Art Online, and several other similar protagonists. Ayumu Murase, the voice of main character Hinata from Haikyuu, and Iruma from Welcome to Demon School, Iruma-kun, as well as Romy Park, the voice of Fullmetal Alchemist Edward Elric, and many, many, many other things. And this definitely sort of ties back to that classic thing of anime tourism, right?
Yeah.
And doing all that stuff to do that. And I thinking back to this, and we've seen a variety of this. It seems like a few short anime episodes is a good way of going with this, as opposed to committing to like a 12-episode anime series. Where you can kind of get things across, you can include things about that area without feeling like you're committing to a huge project.
Well, I mean, also, you're talking a municipal budget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for you know, I mean, it's not the trash collection department. It's not, you know, the sewer and water. It's literally your tourism department. And, you know, I have to imagine for a district of an area, it's probably a minuscule budget.
Mhm.
So this, not to say eggs in one basket, but I would imagine doing a 1-minute short at like 3 o'clock in the morning live action commercial, be like, come and visit. We have the greatest, you know, matzo balls. And thank you. You know what I mean? That would cost you some money and then probably have a little bit left over to print some flyers. I imagine the investment in having an anime done is going to be probably almost all of their budget.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? They're going to have probably next to nothing left over in the time involved. So
Mhm.
yeah, short.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, committing to a 12 episode where they're 22 minutes a shot. No,
Mhm.
there's no way in hell they'd have that kind of cash.
No.
No.
And you know, increasingly, it seems like it is hard for um, these regional areas to collaborate. You know, to be part of a production committee for a larger project. It's going to be basically,
Yeah.
this is the anime about your prefecture done. So yeah, I think it seems wise. I'll be very curious to see kind of what they do. Like, how do you do a series like this with sequences that short to advertise a city? Who knows?
Well, as I say, what's Little Osaka Mama
Mm.
was a short done in the sort of webtoon kind of style. And it was a joke about brother and sister, and the sister literally she had an Osaka dialect usage, so it was kind of funny. It's like, oh, haha, you guys are brother and sister, and you came from the same place, but oh, she's talking like she's a country person from Osaka.
Mm.
And there was another one. I wish I could remember what the name of it was. A little cute little blonde-haired girl, and the guy comes from Tokyo, and he's at this area. And it's not Gifu, but it's some prefecture that he moves from Tokyo, and they go. All it does in each episode is they're like going to school, and then after school they just happen to be somewhere like, oh look, that's the tower of this town. And they're like, oh, that's cool. Nagoya. Thank you.
Thank you, Otalku.
Thank you, Audible. That, you know what I mean, that it was done, it was really cute. And each little bit showed you a little bit more of Nagoya. And it was some, you know, oh, we like to eat this. Well, we like miso this certain style. Well, we're from this town, you know, near Nagoya. We like our miso this way. So it's like, okay, that was cute. It was lighthearted. It kept kind of moving. It was enjoyable. It's like, I'm just kind of surprised you don't see more prefectures pulling each town and city's tourism budget. And like you're saying, you know, coming together with a collaboration and being like, you know, if you throw in, you know, 50,000 yen, you throw in 50,000 yen, all of us together, we can do something for the prefecture that will attract people, not necessarily to your town alone, but to our entire area. And then we can benefit from that.
There was an anime a while back called Isekai Izakaya. And it was about a cafe that is
Cafe to Another World.
Yeah, Cafe to Another World. Yep.
Yeah.
And
I enjoyed that.
I loved it. And every episode ends by featuring a real life izakaya. So there's a live action segment of a guy going to a real life izakaya and saying, "Here's the food there," and I'm like, the Izakaya Association threw some money in the pot for the anime series. You know, and that then they get the free advertising from that in the show. I think it makes sense, right? Like, if we all put our money together, this can help all of us.
Well, they also had that short that was it wasn't like it wasn't like Mommy-san loves eating or something, but it was an office worker lady, and she would go after work to a different izakaya, and she'd sit and she'd have like edamame and an asahi, and she'd finish it off and she'd go pshoo, and it was her relaxing that she had just this very simple meal at an izakaya and how much she enjoyed it. And it's like, wow, this is really obvious that you're saying, after a long day at work, why don't you go to a little izakaya, frequent one of your locals, and just relax and have something nice. It's like, okay, it didn't specifically feature a specific place or a specific food, but the entirety of it was how relaxing it is after a long day of work. Go relax, spend some money, enjoy yourself. Like, yeah, I got you.
So what I would like to see is an anime, travel anime, is a video for Baltimore here.
For Baltimore?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Come visit the Inner Harbor. Please stay at the Inner Harbor.
Right.
Don't go anywhere outside the 6-block area of the Inner Harbor, please.
It's not that bad.
And scene.
Not
Wait a
that
minute.
bad. It's not that bad.
Wait a minute. See, this is why I don't write anime, because I just end things in like less than 2 seconds.
It would be funny to do kind of like that one I was talking about, where they're always making fun of their prefecture and what a bad reputation it is to do that, and then like at the end of every episode, like they get shot. But like in the next episode they're fine, right? But it's just playing off that just, well, obviously you're going to get killed if you come here, but it's still,
But still, you can enjoy some of the sights before you get murdered. Oh, sweet.
All right, moving on to a story that got a lot of attention this week. Is anybody looking to buy a streaming service and got about $1 billion laying around? Anyone? As of this week, Crunchyroll is apparently up for sale. AT&T, Crunchyroll's current parent company, reportedly offered to sell the service to Sony for $1.5 billion, but Sony balked at that price. For anyone not aware, Sony operates Crunchyroll's main competitor, Funimation. The offered price tag effectively values Crunchyroll at about $500 per subscriber. The service just passed 3 million subscribers on July 28th, with more than 70 million registered users in total. The sale is now apparently being pitched to other possible buyers as well as Sony, with an asking price of at least $1 billion. According to tech website The Information, this move possibly demonstrates AT&T's willingness to sell valuable assets to bring down its $151 billion debt load. The company has apparently been strategically selling off assets over the last couple of years. Now, it was reported back in May that Warner Media, the subsidiary that owns Crunchyroll, was looking to sell the service. But a new CEO was appointed in May, and so the decision was delayed to allow him time to evaluate business and strategy and kind of get used to things. I guess he evaluated that they still don't want to hang on to it. So Crunchyroll launched back in 2006. And you may remember that Funimation and Crunchyroll had a brief content sharing partnership several years ago, which ended in 2018 after Sony acquired a majority stake in Funimation in 2017. It'll be interesting to see what happens once decisions are made on this. If Sony does acquire Crunchyroll, will we see a partnership before the services again, or other big changes? What is kind of the over and under from you guys on any possible changes coming out of this?
Depends on the amount of goodwill.
Yeah.
Because Funimation, it was not streaming back that far ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Crunchyroll certainly has the greater amount of goodwill, and I don't think it has necessarily greater name recognition, but I think the goodwill gained over that period of time where it was streaming by itself would give value to the brand. So that if you saw Sony decide to buy it, you might see the survival of the name of Crunchyroll and or just the flat out sticking together of Funimation Crunchyroll.
Well, it's interesting. Yeah,
funny roll.
Funny roll. I like it.
Funny roll. But you know what I mean? It's like it's just kind of hard to envision anybody wanting to buy Crunchyroll to compete with Sony and Funimation. You know what I mean?
If anyone is going to buy a Crunchyroll, my fear, unfortunately, is that it's not to have a business strategy with Crunchyroll. I think it's the business strategy of acquiring Crunchyroll is to liquidate Crunchyroll, so that titles will be sold out. Yeah, that the titles will be sold out, and maybe Funimation will just buy them, wait for that to happen, buy them at bargain prices, and bring it in. If AT&T doesn't care. I mean, let's just put that right out there right now.
Yeah.
They don't care. They're dropping it because they're revenue poor, they're cash poor. This is really a cash for AT&T, so they don't care what happens to Crunchyroll. So whoever's going to come up with the money to meet their price, they're going to sell to, and they're not going to care.
And that's
So hopefully that, if you have Sony on the other hand, that, there's a possibility, I think, that they would actually, like do a merger of the Funimation and Crunchyroll or something of that nature. They would probably just agglomerate it.
Well,
But if you had a Sony esque type other company that won in competition, that's gonna be really hard to find, because I don't think I think right now broadcasters want something larger than that. I think if Sony were to buy it, it was just to expand what they already have, and they would just buy the entire house. I think that's the best option, honestly, for Crunchyroll.
Yeah, I mean,
I just don't see anybody else buying them without liquidating them.
well, I don't know. I mean, Crunchyroll does seem to be successful. By all accounts, they're making money. They've grown their subscriber base, quite well. They've done multiple press releases over the past few years saying, "Hey, we hit this milestone. We're making this much money." So it seems to me, and again, obviously it'll depend on who buys them, if they do. And to be clear, companies get shopped around all the time, and it doesn't mean they do get bought. But I can see a similar sort of media conglomerate grabbing Crunchyroll for the subscriber base and saying, "Hey, yeah, this will be a nice part of the portfolio. It'll be fine." If it's acquired by Sony, I think kind of the ideal solution is, like we were talking about before on the Discord, I think kind of the ideal solution would be both services run simultaneously with content sharing. So if you're on Funimation, you can see all Crunchyroll stuff. If you're on Crunchyroll, you see all Funimation stuff. It's kind of whatever subscription you want. Part of the problem is
but I mean, I think that element of goodwill, that if you're Sony and you own both, you don't really need Funimation. And I don't mean that in like you fire everybody and it's all gone.
Right.
I mean, if you're Sony, you acquire both, the amount of goodwill that you get from Crunchyroll for its prior streaming capabilities and its content and its subscriber base, I think, given the relative newness of Funimation as a streamer, that you would fold that into Crunchyroll, so that instead of sharing content, you would transfer the entirety of the Funimation content streaming onto Crunchyroll and leave Funimation with your licensing and all of the back house work.
Okay, so Crunchyroll just becomes the streaming platform, and Funimation is the licensing. Arm.
They go back to doing what Funimation initially was doing, which is acquiring the material, and then you just use Crunchyroll as your portal out.
That's a very interesting idea.
One thing I could say that would terrify me would be if Disney got an idea that buying Crunchyroll and
darkest timeline.
Stop. And this is not to be mean, but buying it and then burying it. Because even though it's not in the exact same vein as Disney, it's still a streaming competitor. And if it's up for sale, you can buy and do with what you want. And so if you don't find that valuable, you can say, I'd rather bury it to avoid the competition.
And let's not forget, Disney licensed frickin' Doraemon.
Yep.
Like, they are not unaware of the power of anime.
But they wouldn't, you don't want that as a competition. You can get a hold of it.
I am presenting that as evidence that I think Disney is are no fools here. I can totally see them saying, this would be convenient.
Yeah, what could we do by taking the assets of that, burying it, and then using whatever remaining license stream to say Disney Plus now has Crunchyroll content? Be like, oh no, don't do that.
Yep. That'd be really interesting. I don't know. Oops, sorry. That's pretty much. I don't know. And it's tough because it's funny because prior to this week, the biggest complaint about anime streaming services is that there are too many of them, and we hate paying for like 5 different anime streaming services. And now we're frightened about one of them being shut down. It's like, But I think it is interesting that, and partly it's because these are the two big ones, right? These are the ones with the best relationships in Japan, the ones that are constantly licensing things, and Crunchyroll being one of the ones that is funding new anime, and it's helping to make things happen. So that would be quite interesting. The other side of the coin is what was I reading? There's some book about this saying that the thing is, acquiring companies to liquidate them historically is fairly rare. It happens, certainly, but usually when a company gets acquired, it's because you want to keep that business going. Otherwise, why would you buy it? So I think at least
I
the
would hope
odds,
so.
yeah, the odds are not high. In other words, that a company that buys it, I certainly agree that it is a distinct possibility here.
Well, let me give you a real example. InfoSeek, and we discussed this before, some time before. InfoSeek was a very real competitor of Yahoo and a precursor to Google.
Mm-hmm.
So InfoSeek had a really good search engine. They had really, the algorithms they were using made it a really good search engine.
Mm-hmm.
Disney, I'm not picking on Disney. I'm not bad mouthing Disney. I'm just saying this is business decisions, business.
Mm-hmm.
Disney was looking to acquire portal content knowledge to be able to more effectively, utilize merchandisation and commercialization of their properties. So they acquired lock, stock, and barrel in the 90s. InfoSeek, the whole thing. They dropped coin, acquired it. InfoSeek disappeared. Like, they discontinued InfoSeek as a thing. And then they used the constituent parts and people of InfoSeek to build into Disney and then launch Disney Go.
Yeah.
And it was a family-friendly portal. It wouldn't do certain things. It was limited in any kinds of content that you could get. And it wasn't, no offense to them, but it was an utter failure. So they just sort of rolled Disney Go sort of kind of away and just
absorbed.
Really they just massively increased their internal structural capacity for the internet with all those parts. But they bought InfoSeek for the sole express purpose of burying it and then using its assets and knowledge to further a business goal. So that's what, an acquisition of Crunchyroll, you know what I mean? There's the very real possibility. They're doing something you want, and they've got the equipment and the people to do that, and that you can acquire it, bury it, and then disperse those assets in a way that functions for your business purposes better than just having it continue as Crunchyroll.
Yeah, I just wonder what Crunchyroll is doing technically, business-wise, that would be that yeah, because I mean, certainly there have been some things that Crunchyroll's platform is impressive technically. There were one or two articles I read about somebody saying, to have 70 million, registered users and like 3 million like subscribers and pushing out this much content. Obviously, video streaming is not as hard as it used to be.
Right.
But they clearly have a platform that's pretty effective. It would be fascinating to see one of the smaller media companies come along and say, our streaming platform isn't very good. We're just going to use your tech.
a smaller group ponying up $1 billion is going to be
true.
Yeah. I mean, because you figure in a lot of the traditional acquisitions, you have not only cash, but you also have, you trade securities back and forth and, debt notes, et cetera, and make all those sort of in-house changes. If you're a small enough group, nobody's going to be like, yeah, we want some shares of your podunk know nothing. They're going to be like, yeah, you got $1 billion cash? Just you drop it right here on the table before we, seriously entertain your offer.
And that's the interesting thing is I think AT&T clearly needs the money, and so they are valuing Crunchyroll rather highly. I can't imagine. Well, no, I can. I was going to say I can't imagine every Crunchyroll subscriber being worth $500. Like that is a huge valuation for any given organization. But I can see it being attractive.
Well, as I say, the question is how much, you have got Crunchyroll, the streaming service, and you have Crunchyroll, the store.
Right.
I mean, so you have an ease of that platform sort of transition. So if you're watching, use a God of High School. You really want a God of High School T-shirt? You can be watching God of High School and click on the store link, and you know what I mean. Go buy that thing.
Yep.
So I think for potential merch sales, for ancillary business opportunities, and in-app kind of information sales, if you're going to do the Facebook thing, yeah, I think you can generate fairly decent content, out of the 3 million subscribers, but certainly 70 million people who have filled out where do you live, what's your gender, what's your household income, and they've set up all the accounts. That's mineable data.
True. Very
You
true.
know what I mean, and data mining is a value in and of itself. So $500, I don't know what data mining's worth. Obviously, Mark Zuckerberg does, and it's worked out really, really well.
Yeah.
And arguably, same sort of thing that I just saw Jeff Bezos talking about his $189 billion value. That, you know what I mean? Amazon makes tremendous money from transactions.
Yep.
And don't even fool yourself that they're not mining your data.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's a reason why your Amazon ads always pop up in the little sidebar of stuff, is because they've mined your data and they're streaming that little ad to you based on your choices. It's like, it's
not always very well, but that,
Well, just to give you context on cost for data mining for a nonprofit, if you were to get, say, another magazine's mailing list, say you decide to get National Geographic's mailing list, for about 10,000 names on there, with about a little over 1% error, meaning that there are incomplete on there, is usually around $5,000, or it was around $5,000. And that's actually determining what kind of data. So if you're a nonprofit, you're going for the cheapest address kind of thing. So that's cheap end. That's the cheap end of it. So if the more data that you want, the more that you're going to have to spend for.
Right.
So it kind of depends on what data you want, but it just gives you an idea that if you're spending $5,000 on 10,000 people, that's that's a chunk of change for data that, if you're thinking 70 million, how much is that? That can be a lot of money.
Yeah.
And depending upon who wants it and what their message is. I mean, can you imagine just so here's the Donald J. Trump campaign buying the 70 million member list of Crunchyroll for their kind of thing. But that's what they do. That's how they get. So if it's worth it, if it's worth it to them, then they'll definitely pony up the money at a point there.
Yeah. We'll see.
There we go.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how it goes the next several months as to what AT&T decides to do.
Yeah. Who knows?
And what a fall! This is so many of these long-term things. Sears, and Roebuck, Sears Holdings, all these long-term things. AT&T, Atlantic Telegraph and Telephone, all these iconic, 20, 30 years ago, the things that were like, these are investments you can't go wrong. It's like investing in Exxon, or investing, it's a landmark thing. It will never go bad. It'll be wine and song and sunshine forever. And then all these things now are just rocketing down the toilet.
But then again, AT&T came from Ma Bell.
Yeah.
And and they were forced to splinter up to what, 7 different companies, I think it was. AT&T was the most successful one of them, I think.
Yeah, AT&T, Bell Southwest. You had some other all the baby bells that came off of Bell Telephone Systems. Yeah, and it's just all of everything's just circling the event horizon, spinning in.
Like, you were going to go in a different direction, but
I know you did, but we're not doing that.
No,
we can talk about the Coriolis effect and all that, but we're not going to go there. We're going to take the higher road. Go a little sciencey, black hole-y kind of thing.
Fair enough.
Do that.
So, speaking of things spiraling, first Kinokuniya bookstores in Sydney, next the whole of Australia. The Australian Classification Board has officially banned all sales and imports of No Game, No Life novels, Volume 1, 2, and 9. Volumes 1 and 2 are classified as RC, or Refused Classification, due to being publications that, quote, describe or depict in a way that is likely to cause offense to a reasonable adult a person who is or appears to be a child under 18, whether the person is engaged in sexual activity or not, end quote. What will cause offense to a reasonable adult is a rather broad standard for a law, but the board have decided that No Game, No Life definitely will. Volume 9 was also flagged on publications that, quote, describe, depict, express, or otherwise deal with matters in such a way that they offend against the standards of morality, decency, and propriety, generally accepted by reasonable adults to the extent that they should not be classified, end quote. Titles that have been classified as RC cannot be sold, hired, advertised, or legally imported in Australia. This contains content that is very high in impact and falls outside generally accepted community standards. No Game, No Life. The anime was classified by the board when it came out as MA 15+ for strong sexual themes and is legally restricted to people above the age of 15, but is otherwise available. So this continues the trend, certainly, that we have seen before. What intrigues me about this is this seems oddly targeted out of only a few works.
Mm-hmm. I don't know what their axe to grind is, but just and Brent, Steve, you guys tell me. I've only ever watched the anime. I really enjoyed the anime, and I
have no idea.
Is the manga is it like really just saucy,
let's find
trashy
out
stuff or something, like, you know what I mean? It's like the anime was fine. The anime was really good. I actually enjoyed it. I was
still
hoping there would be more.
Mm.
You know, I watched the movie that they did, No Game, No Life. You know, and it's like I don't see where they're coming up with this.
Watch the anime, and I don't see the purpose. I mean, it's just like any other anime for a more older person. When I say older, I mean someone like 15, 16 years old watching it. And so I think it's
Becca, I'm a totally unreasonable adult.
A more or less appropriate for that age. Manga, I never really read it, but I don't really recall that much and again, it doesn't seem to me anything different than what you see as Bulma on the very old Dragon Ball Z, mangas. So I don't really see anything different. So there is either an axe to grind of a specific company that is whatever, or as you guys have been pointing out for the past couple of weeks, that when this thing comes up again, when Australia is deciding to ban something else again, that it's basically just votes axe to grind, and this is what they're seizing on. This very well could be just that. This is the thing that they decide. This is the cause celeb, and this is what we're going to use. And again, that's when I point out, if you really have to do that for anime, that you can do that with. But again, I'm when it comes to the spectrum of this particular topic of censorship of anything like this or music or anything like that, I'm pretty far on one side of it, which is I'm really suspect of it. I really don't like it. I think it's a slippery slope, and I think that I think what you guys have been saying in the past is right, which is I think this is just to get votes because they're really going after an offensive anime, to be honest, and maybe they're doing that on purpose so that when they finally get the votes and they're reelected and they go back, they can just drop this like a hot potato. And then the business of it all can continue because
but see, that's the problem. It's like
if you do go after the other ones, and you're really sincere about shutting this down, you're shutting down.
And that's the problem, Steve. It's like once you cross that bridge, it's like there is
a slippery.
There is the sort of political. Well, there's the witch hunt. It results in nothing. That's the political promise platform.
Right.
Question, ultimately is that coming up with what these, moral community standards are, which really, these subjective things versus objective things, which famously, the judge in the pornography case is talking about. You don't know what porn is, but know it when you know it when you see it, but there's not really an objective standard for it as to what the reasonable adult finds offensive or inoffensive. And it's like the question ultimately for these bannings and stuff is like, how much are you able to drop this once the campaign's over? How much
That's my
is this
point.
going to be, precedential? Where now once it's done, that's it. You have to actually get your, whatever the state of Victoria or the state of New South Wales, you have to get your legislative process to undo what you've done. And you know what I mean? This is one of those things where it's like, good night. You know how hard it is to undo that kind of stuff?
And that's my point. That's why I don't like this. This is one of those things where you just want to say, you know what? Let the parents decide. Let the parents be the issue decider on this. Don't make this political, because we went through some of you are not going to remember this, but we went through the 80s of people burning Blondie records, for Christ's sake. And books like that, the
Iron Maiden.
The Iron Maiden. And actually, no, the Judas Priest court case where the parents said that they told their son that the song convinced their son to kill themselves, and it turned out to be like, what's his name, just taking a breath in, and maybe it sounds like, I don't know, but I mean, it's just we went through at least 10 years of that, and then in the 90s we had Ice-T doing the Cop Killer album, and then we have the gore effect, of rating CDs and stuff, and it's just never on. It's always ongoing. And the thing that I hate is when they actually make into law these designations. So when we're talking about the RC designations, that's the problem right there, is making that into law. That shouldn't be law. That should be just something as a guidance level. I mean, that's what it is for movies. For movies, there's the PG-13, the X ratings, and all that stuff. There's no law behind it. There's no authority behind it. Really.
That's the Motion Picture Academy doing their thing.
Right, exactly. And that's a self-regulating entity as opposed to the government. So that's something that so that's why I get really ticked off when I read about the Australian government doing something like this. And with an anime or a manga of no game, no life. I mean, it just doesn't make sense.
But America does have obscenity laws.
Yes, they do, and they do have obscenity laws, but they're not codified. And by that I mean there's not a this is what this is, this is what this is, this is what this is, this is what it is.
Right.
It's very broad.
Right.
I mean, you have like very specific categories with regards to underage, minors, etc. But in the broader stroke of things, it's like, is somebody riding horseback naked, engaging in adult activity, is that obscene? You know what I mean? It's like there's so much subjectivity in some of the elements of the enforcement, where it's like, if you're not hurting the animal, you know what I mean, there's laws for that. But it's a lot of this stuff is like subjective kind of application of a sort of broadly written statute. It makes it very difficult to know where you're going to move forward.
And keep in mind that we are talking about acts that are not even acts. We're talking about, particularly with the Australians, we're talking about something that is a print, a sell, something digital.
But that's illegal in the U.S. too.
Well, again, it depends on the actual classification of it. In other words, here in America, we can say, well, this book is the Kama Sutra. It's not, but
Kama Sutra. Wow, Steve, you had that at hand, didn't you? There.
The Kama Sutra here is obscene. Well, is it obscene because in our laws we can say, well, is it obscene because of what the acts within, or is it obscene, or is it not obscene because it's something to help you with your sex life? Mm-hmm. There's that determination, but again, even then, you're talking about something that's so subjective as opposed to what the Australians are trying to do, which is really pinpoint what it is. And when you start pinpointing stuff, you're going to have a real problem. There's one thing to make regulation to be protective. It's another thing to make regulation to go after.
But we already have regulation that says that you cannot portray sexual activity with characters that appear to be under the age of 18 in the U.S.
Right, because that's a protective law.
Right.
But that's a protective law. So there's that, as opposed to, just saying, because we have what we think is a scantily clad looking girl on the cover of a book, we're going to X that out.
But isn't
or
that
it's
just
the
the application
literature.
of the law, though? I'm confused.
Yes, it's application of the law of. I think I'm getting your question.
Yeah.
The application of the law is when you're talking about underage
Mm.
sex, it's about protection, and we have laws that are not concerned with obscenity laws. We're concerned with laws of protection.
Mm.
When you're
So
talking about obscenity,
child related laws versus
child relations, what is pornography?
defined as adult or pornography.
That's it. Yes. So if you're looking at child, what you determine as child pornography, which is the act of, and particularly if there is an actual person involved, like we're talking about a video of a young child, a picture of a young child, or this is the actual child.
Okay.
That's a definitive problem. That is not good. We don't want that. Nobody wants that, except for the really odd people that do, and that's a problem. But when you're talking about something of a nature of no game, no life, or something that is more creative in that fashion, and the participants in it, if they're real, are of age. That's why they do that. Now, if you're talking about of a book where, like, for example, you're reading a book and it deals with the subject of a child being raped, is that pornography? Because if you say that it is, then you have to provide why. Why is it pornography as opposed to actually why is evolving or creating a story around an act like that in a novel? Why is that pornography? If you decide that it is pornography, as opposed to something where you purposely draw a person for the act of sexual titillation to be under 13, or to be like 13 years old or 12 years old, and this is the point of it. Do you see the distinction? And then what I feel that the Australians are moving in the direction of is, I think they're getting to that point where they're saying, these are the examples of what we think is wrong. What we decide is, it's the government deciding for you, what does pornography mean? Here in America, we do have those laws that regulate, but there's a certain level of, we're able to determine what that means for ourselves. And we rely on the protection laws of the people involved to act as the authoritative laws. That makes sense.
I guess I'm still not getting it. So to me, Australia has laws saying if you portray sexual activity with underage characters, not cool, you can be banned, right? And they are using those laws now on No Game, No Life and other things.
Right.
We have laws with the same restrictions. And so if are you arguing that we should not have those same laws? I guess that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm
I see. I think this is where the disconnect where you and I are having, that I don't see Australia having the same laws as we do.
Okay.
I see Australia as having stricter laws that don't need to exist.
How do you see the laws being stricter? That's what I'm trying to understand.
Because I think they're actually defining what it is, as the government defining what pornography is. And if you're stating pornography as something, when you look at something, you go, is that really pornography? And that's the age-old question. And even here in America, we still have that argument: is this pornography? And while there are some guidelines that we have, it tells us, okay, also protection, like for underage kids and things like that.
Right.
When does a piece of literature become obscene?
Mm-hmm.
And when is it an actual work of literature, even though it might have this uncomfortable moment in it?
So
is that actually we have? What I feel is that Australia has a similar right now.
Mm-hmm.
is in that vein where they're still able to ask that question and to define for themselves as a people what is the actual pornography here. My fear is that for Australia, they're just going to say, this is pornography. This is pornography. This is pornography. That's not pornography. That's not pornography. What are you doing?
Well, it's certainly very. It's very interesting from their Well, it's very interesting from the perspective that they're having this discussion about something that we apparently don't have that discussion.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so if you want to talk about, you know, the sun never sets on the British Empire. We all, you know, share a common law heritage. And it's just interesting that the Australians are addressing this that doesn't seem to rise to the level of necessity in a similar English-speaking country. And arguably, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't looked at it, but arguably, there's not any information coming out of England in the same vein, or Canada. You know what I mean? So that it's interesting that Australia finds that this is an issue that needs to be addressed when other members of the former Commonwealth kind of don't.
Well, yeah.
So why is this rise to that level for them?
Well, and there have been some. I know there was a case of a Canadian who imported some stuff a couple of years ago that was underage and got prosecuted under law, and it was one of those broadly similar kind of things where it's like, well, I don't think this law applies. We do, you know, back and forth, and well, it hasn't been.
But there hasn't seemed to be like this is a discussion generally about how Australia is handling this.
Right.
I'm not aware of, you know, if that case being that case, you know, you have child protection laws that to regulate that, but did Canada have that discussion as a society to say, you know, this is protecting children, but we need to go more broadly across these different subject areas and address it as a different category for some reason. Because, you know, I'm not up on, you know, jurisprudence in Australia and how they do things and how their statutory, you know, structures go, but presumably, much like, you know, the rest of the world, you would hope, have specifically child protective laws. So what is the necessity of this beyond the political scope for the long term, beyond this one politician's moment in the sun? What is the long term purpose of this? Because I'm not really aware that, you know, we've had No Game No Life as an anime, and I don't know how in depth the manga goes. You know, we presumably have the manga here.
Well, that's the thing. We don't you know, Amazon removed it.
Okay.
So,
you know, for the number of years, that it was available, Amazon, a private company, took the effort to do so. But was that at the behest? Did Congress say this has got to go?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There doesn't seem to be that didn't really seem to happen. Is this also arguably, and not to be crafty or stupid, you know, there's plenty of anime that are out there where it's like, oh ho ho ho, here's a guy who's 10 years old and he looks like he's 25. Ha ha ha. You know, he looks like an adult. Or here you've got somebody who's, you know, 4 foot tall and she looks like she's 10. Oh no, she's 23. Is this something in that where the creator, you know, could go back of No Game No Life and be like, okay, fine. The brother is actually 40 and the sister is actually 27. They just look really young. That's, you know what I mean? Does that solve it, or what? You know, what's the kernel of this?
Well, and apparently, unfortunately, No Game Life is based on novels that like it establish that the younger sister is like 11, and like that's like a stated thing. But I also wonder if this isn't kind of related to. I think we talked about this on air a while back. That Japan for a long time had no child protective laws because they were under an umbrella of a broader law, and it was never seen as needed to have that. So I wonder if there isn't kind of a discussion in Australia around these laws, you know, good or ill, around, you know, here's how these laws are defined now. Maybe we need to change them. Maybe we're unhappy with them. And I suspect this is one of those unfortunate things where we know too much, in the sense that I think No Game No Life somebody showed them No Game No Life, and they're like, oh my gosh. And they don't know that there's worse stuff out there. They have no clue
Right.
about all the other
Right.
things out there. They're just like, well, this is clearly unacceptable, and it can't be any worse than this. Like, let me show you. No, let me not show you. No.
Yeah.
Legend of the Overfiend, anyone? Let's have a watching session. Hey.
Oh.
I mean, that's just
Yeah.
always the interesting part when you
Mhm.
when you launch on a moral crusade,
Mhm.
is that Steve saying the slippery slope.
Mm.
Whose morals?
Mhm.
And I mean, it's great to speak in the general sense of what a society's morals are,
Mhm.
but and I mean, are those morals the
And I
middle
think-
class? Are they the upper class? Are they
Right.
minorities? Are they, ethnic minority? Where is your moral basis for making a broad presumption?
So, pulling this back to anime, I wonder. Evangelion, when it came out, got a big backlash from parent-teacher unions for its scene involving Misato's apartment with clothes strewn everywhere and all that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
all of these PTA organizations, all these organizations suddenly called up. And I think it was Ano who said, here's the thing. I don't know a lot of mothers who watched Evangelion.
Right.
I think somebody organized the campaign and got a bunch of people, excited
Riled
and
up,
organized a
yeah.
whole thing around this. So I think it's one of the missing pieces in this Australia story is who's driving this? Is it some, middle class organization who's like, and I don't mean that in a negative sense, but is this some, social organization who's like, this offends my values, this is the law, thus clearly it needs to go, boom, and the government's like, okay, or is it a politician saying, haha, I can get more votes through this thing? Is it a vague thing? Is it one specific, is it lobbying basically?
Yeah. It's the International League of Karens, and they want to speak to the manager.
Pretty much.
Oh no!
Right.
But I mean, and then that's what I'm getting at is like,
Yeah.
where's the moral point of this? Because
Mhm.
if you have, and I'm not picking on people named Karen, but
Yeah.
the meme, the accepted
Mhm.
Karen meme, do you have a group of Karens who they're just deeply offended at the idea of some cartoon? And
Yeah.
damn it, something must be done.
Mhm.
And it's like, okay,
And then when it happens, then you have then you realize how complex the issue actually is. I mean, how long have we been discussing this particular issue?
Yeah.
Brent, no, seriously, and Brent and I going back and forth on this.
Yeah.
And at one point we're both speaking different languages to each other.
Yeah.
And and then you need a third person to come in and say, well, guys, this is what we think this might mean. Here's the actual question. But it gets people, just, and then what do these things mean? And what do they, how do they impact us? Where's the authority behind it? What is it? And I swear to God, if it's a Karen behind all this, I'm really going to be upset.
and Ginger Gaden's absolutely correct in the chat. Is that it's also complicated by the fact that what does underage look like?
Right.
There are plenty of age people. I had a situation in a role playing game where I was playing. This is a few years ago, and one of those maybe 10 years ago. And there was this cute girl playing with me. And she was playing in the game. She was really, really good. She had, colored hair and all this kind of stuff. And I was just, really enjoying hanging out with her and started talking to her. And turns out she was 14 years old. And she just presented as much more mature than that. You're petite, but much more mature than that.
Right.
And I was like, oh, okay, these conversations are going to be different, and I wasn't gonna hit her, I wasn't hitting on her or anything, but it's like, oh, gotcha, sliding you over here now. And,
let me not make that saucy comment I was just about to make.
Exactly. And it gets really complicated. Plus, just the fact that anytime you have one culture's culture
Stories.
around
Right.
what is acceptable. Japan's very permissive with a lot of this stuff. Hitting another culture saying that's fine, this isn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, Australia has much more accessibility, being closer.
Well, it's also that interesting question. Beyond those is from you're saying one culture versus another culture. You have a largely non-Christian culture,
Yeah.
and its intellectual property coming into contact with a largely Christian culture that has different sense of certain things that can be glaring in some circumstances. I mean, where again, if you had the manga and you just put the title page and said, brother is 40, sister is 27, please don't be concerned, and then let people read it. It's like that facing page of it would solve everything. But you know what I mean? It's like if you made that clear as a warning at the start, it'd be like, would this be an issue?
Well, then you also have the problem that there are people who absolutely mess with that, and do stories where they are not that, but they change the number, and so it's all okay now, right? Like we can do that to these people. And it's fine. It's like
they're not brother and sister; they're step brother and sister. It's fine then.
Yeah.
Distant cousins. Oh no, that's too close.
We had a whole conversation about this last night, Steve and I. Oh boy, it gets interesting. But
all I can think of is the Simpsons, Jebediah Springfield and Shelbyville, Manhattan, and their idea of moving out to found Springfield, and Jebediah Springfield, he's saying that it's to find freedom and to enjoy delicious, flavorless root marm. And Shelbyville, Manhattan goes, it's not to marry our attractive cousins. And then they split to Shelbyville and Springfield. So there we go.
There we go.
Your discussion, I'm only envisioning that right there.
Okay.
Who gets to be Homer? Who gets to be Springfield? Who gets to be Shelbyville? Who or Steve? Who's going to choose?
So let's move on to something rather happier.
The news
story-wise, if my stuff would cooperate with me, which it does not want to. This week, the Association of Japanese Animation is helping out those new in the animation industry or those hoping to join it someday. On Wednesday, they released a free 52-page manual that comprehensively covers the role of animation production assistant, an entry-level job that can lead to many other roles in the industry. Production assistants take the role of project managers, coordinating work on a production and maintaining communications. The PDF manual is based on data from Studio Trigger producer Kazuyo Matsumoto's self-published guide to animation production assistants. The AGA's Development of Human Resources Committee also researched the industry standards relevant to the role. A number of other anime studios also assisted in the creation of the manual, including A1 Pictures, Sunrise, Studio 4C, and Nippon Animation. It's really cool seeing stuff like this come out that is just purely helpful to people.
The fact it's 52 pages.
Yeah.
Well, for me, that as I was reading it and listening to you, I was like thinking, day one, here's a mop, and your production assistant job. I can tell that being an assistant or being in a PA for a theater, it literally is the grunt work. It really is the bottom level. You're the gopher. Here's the coffee. Yeah, you're going to sweep the stage every night after every performance. You're going to do whatever the director wants to do. You're going to do whatever the stage manager wants you to do. And it's just total grunt work. I mean, you're talking, you show up early and you leave late and you don't get paid well, but these are things that you do to move forward. So I'm kind of curious to see this document.
That's the thing.
That sounds interesting, actually.
If you've seen Shirobako, the main character from that is her job. So that will give you an idea what that is. I'm actually just pulling it up now. Of course, it's all in Japanese, which I can read not at all.
I was going to say, translate it for us, Brent.
Yeah.
Come on.
And so it looks like, yeah, this is nice. It is going into elements around like storyboards, how those are laid out, timing sheets, the cell sheets. Oh wow, there's a whole schedule laid out. That's nice, like a Gantt chart, basically, showing you what that is.
I wonder if they present this to like people who show up. They're like, "I'm gonna do this. This is gonna be a thing. I've always dreamed of this all the way through high school." And then they say, "Here's 52 pages. Read it, and then come back if you're still interested."
Yeah.
Here's
If you're
the
not,
weeding
it was
out
nice seeing you.
document.
Yeah,
Here's the
exactly.
weeding out document.
Pretty much.
Exactly. So once you learn that, you're like, "Oh no."
Well, and this is the
Oh,
thing,
yeah.
is that the production assistant basically gets assigned, of course, depending on studio and so forth, to make sure this episode gets done. You know, you are PA on episode 3, and the shots have to get assigned to animators. They all have to get them done on time, and you got to make sure that all of these shots get done in 3 weeks. Go, have fun. And so
Make
you're
it
doing
happen,
that.
people.
Yep.
Chop, chop.
And you're scheduling things, and obviously, you know, as you learn over time, and you're given more responsibility. But still,
Right.
it's a big deal. And that's one of the things I think is so interesting, is that this is the kind of job that is not that is technical, in the sense that there's a lot of keeping track of things and so forth, compared to like the director's job, producer's job, things like that, which is a little more flexible. So I think it's a great choice of something to make a document out of, to say, okay, here are your tools of the trade, here's how it has to be organized, all that kind of stuff. Where other roles are just kind of like, figure it out.
Can you
Tell a good story.
imagine the day planner for an anime production assistant?
Gosh.
That thing must be hard, and it must be like this thick.
Mm-hmm.
It only goes 1 week.
Yeah, I know.
Well, isn't that why you have your little personal digital assistant? That
Yeah, right.
Just because
Well,
the amount of paper that you would need just to track all that crap would be amazing.
It's why they have these giant whiteboards with all the shots on them, all laid out, and you color them in.
Yeah.
You know, and you got to lay all that stuff out. It is nuts. And then of course, you know, making sure it gets done.
Yeah, that's just...
Oh yeah, I'll get to it.
Well, like Shirobako and Animation Runner. Who the
Kuromi.
hell was Animation Runner?
Kuromi.
Animation.
You know, just that idea of like physically being, okay, this is the thing that has to get done. Are you done with the key features? No. Open up, hurry, open the door, get it done. I need this stuff now. We're on a schedule. And it's like, oh boy, yeah, no.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Again, 52 pages of weeding people out. That's going to be good. It'll be interesting whether that will mean there'll be like a shortage of people trying to be production assistants. Whether it be like all of a sudden we've got 50,000 people that have no idea what this job is, and we hire 10,000 of them because they actually got some talent, down to like 200 people now. That you're like,
Yep.
Whoops.
Well, and note in Shirobako the turnover in production assistants.
Yeah.
Like that is a thing that happens over the course of that show. Yeah. Yep. That's a hint. But that's not the only production-related thing that we have to talk about, which is kind of cool. See if this works now. Yay! In recent times, we've seen an increase in new technology that seeks to lighten or augment traditional anime and manga production. This week brings a machine learning framework that's designed to create high-quality anime backgrounds from real photographs. Developed by a Chinese research team from Wuhan University and Hubei University of Technology, the program is called Anime GAN, a novel lightweight GAN for photo animation. It makes use of generative adversarial networks, or GANs, and neural style transfer to achieve fast and high-quality results with a light framework. The goal is to help artists save time in creating lines, textures, colors, and shadows. So basically getting a head start. As demonstrated by the example of pictures, it can be used to emulate existing styles, pictured in the same photo rendered in Hayao Miyazaki style, Paprika style, and Makoto Shinkai style. And so we'll have to see some like actual examples of these. It'll be interesting to see how close it got. The authors of the study that the framework stems from submitted their papers to the International Symposium on Intelligence, Computation, and Applications 2019 and became available to online academic literature hub Springer Link on May 26th. A GitHub user by the name of Tachibana Yoshino implemented the open source code using TensorFlow. So it is now available for anyone to download and create their own anime-style images. I don't know about you all. I'm going to do that right after the news.
That's actually, I love the idea of that.
Mhm.
One of the things that as you were reading it, the image I got when I originally bought my first copy of Grave of the Fireflies DVD. One of the things that the bonuses was the actual pictures of the backgrounds of the where they were living towards the end in the the cave, the rocks, the forest around it. Can you imagine actually having that picture and then doing that rendering, then putting that into the movie?
Mhm.
Can you imagine that? That would just be amazing. It would be really, really amazing. I like the idea of it.
I'm on their GitHub, and what I love is that he has actually taken screen caps from a behind the scenes on a Makoto Shinkai film, and they have like photos of where they went, and then he shows it in all the different things, including a photo of Makoto Shinkai. So you're going to see Makoto Shinkai in Makoto Shinkai style.
Nice.
Which is kind of funny, but yeah, and it's funny because looking at it, it's basically a set of filters, right? In the sense that it doesn't have that painterly style,
Right.
directly that you get out of that, but it does make it look a lot more anime, for lack of a better term. It's really, really interesting. Yeah,
Well, I know years ago when I worked at the zoo, the photographer we had that would come up, he had some program where he could take a photo of something and it would render it in watercolor, or it would render it in oil painting, or it would render it in charcoal, or it would, what I mean? The program would do the rendering of the image in that art style that you wanted. So I'm wondering that, and that was 14 years ago.
Oh yeah. Photoshop's
so
had those filters for a while. Yeah.
It's like, so I would imagine this must be, this many years later must be really damn amazing.
No kidding. That's really cool.
Think about the implication on the budget of an anime, and just think about how much more money will be freed up to go into other things, other types, of the process. If you can do that with the backgrounds, if you can simply make backgrounds by taking a decent photographer, take decent pictures, and then bring it back, then that's something you don't have to worry about. I mean, it took, was it in Ghost in a Shell? It took them a year to do that 140-second scene, and with all the CGI and the drawn into it. Imagine if you had, if those actual places existed, and you were able to take the pictures of that. That's a budget number you don't have to worry about.
Yeah.
That's
what was the background studio that just went bankrupt? Studio Florida? No, something
like, I don't remember the name, but yeah.
But what I mean? That's the good news is that, since they did so many backgrounds and now they're bankrupt and out of business, you've got something to replace that. The bad news is the next studio who does backgrounds that was going to take the workload from that studio that went bankrupt, now itself will go bankrupt because now the program will do it for them. Like, oh.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, looking at the thing, it looks like really what you're getting out of it is, like I said, Photoshop filters. You're getting the visual style without the brushstrokes to make it look like anime. So I think the advantage it's going to have is, obviously there'll be anime that say, do this thing, apply a filter, done. But for a lot of studios, I think it'll be great just to be able to say, we've established our artistic tone. Take all your photos, run it through this, and then here is your exact visual reference for your backgrounds. So when you paint your backgrounds, use this color scheme, use this, make it look like this. It just has to look painted. We'll see. But technology is definitely racing ahead, as should surprise absolutely no one.
Is it Tier Studio?
Could be. I do not remember. I'll be honest. That is gone right out of the head.
I was gonna say I'm looking at the news stuff, the dark side of the
Mm.
Japanese animation industry in
Mm.
Variety, an actual
Okay.
article from Variety that talked about Tier Studio.
Could be. Moving on to other happy news. Remember several months back when the staff and musicians of Cowboy Bebop came together to create a special performance for charity? The same thing's happening again this week, at this time with the cast and staff from My Hero Academia. May's charity rendition of The Real Folk Blues was arranged by Tencent audio coordinator Mason Lieberman, who's doing the same thing again with My Hero Academia BGM tracks Might Plus You and You Say Run. More than 80, that's 80 artists participated in creating the new track, including 22 members of the original English dub cast and original soundtrack composer Yuki Hayashi. The track was released on YouTube and music streaming services and is also getting a limited vinyl release because 2020. The vinyl version can only be obtained by people who back the project on vinyl music crowdfunding website Curates with a Q, with all proceeds going to the United Nations Children's Fund, aka UNICEF. Game and anime composer James Landino has also produced a tech-core remix of You Say Run, which is exclusive for purchase. Now,
Wow.
I haven't
Wow.
like I have a passing exposure to My Hero Academia. I've not watched the whole thing. Is the soundtrack like, epic?
I don't think it's so much the soundtrack is epic. I just think that My Hero Academia is so that's like when people say anime, it's My Hero Academia. Well, how about My Hero Academia? I think this is gonna raise some serious money. I don't think it has to do with the quality of what the song is at, because I actually don't remember the opening song at all. But that doesn't mean anything, because if it's this popular with an anime this popular, I think people who are really into it are going to be like, I want that vinyl. Do you have a record player that can play that? I don't care. I want that vinyl. And so really, I think it's not knowing that much about I've watched a few episodes, not knowing that much about the anime, but knowing how powerfully popular it is, I can't imagine this isn't going to raise money, and I think that's just freaking awesome. I think that's just it's great.
And they could release this thing on 8-track and people will still buy it because they love the series.
Yeah.
Nobody has an 8-track player. They'll still buy it.
I wonder if you can still produce 8-track. I wonder if there's still like companies out there that have equipment for duplicating 8-track. That'd be funny.
I bet you there's money. I mean, I bet you there's a way.
There's a way.
I think my parents have an 8-track somewhere. I should see if I can find that.
If you can build a giant robot for $1 million, I think you could probably find a way with enough money to make an 8-track.
Fair point.
You're like, there you go.
We live in interesting times. Speaking of, finally, summer in Japan is typically the season for tests of courage and spooky outings, just as the fall is for us in the U.S. If you find yourself hankering for the haunted house experience but are unable to leave the house, Tokyo-based haunted house Obaken might be starting just the program for you. Beginning in August, Obaken will be offering online horror experiences through video chat services like Skype, Zoom, and Vimeo. These services take the form of interactive stories where participants can communicate with actors as the tale progresses. The headline act is Manago Will Something Happen? A mysterious ghost painting introduced by an occult otaku program. And there's good news for those of us outside Japan. This program is set to get an international version in September. The story stars occult fanatic Satoshi Asakura, who opens the video call with a lecture about a ghost painting he procured from a flea market. However, both the host and guests are confronted with strange sights midway through the call. The experience will be hosted on Airbnb, which is an interesting marketing move. I'm not sure seeing ghosts appearing in the property would be a great motivator to go stay there, but hey, maybe it'll work. Each showing will allow up to 8 guests and cost 1,800 yen, or about $17. The program also offers a second experience that accommodates up to 10 guests called The Fool's Offense, where participants are responsible for guiding the actor to safety as they watch his story play out on screen, which is a really interesting premise.
It's going to lead the actor's death. That's where it's going to go.
Every time.
Somebody's going to troll it, and they're going to end up like what was the AI thing that Google launched, and so many people went in and fiddled with it that it ended up making it like this horrible, like terrible racist
was that
program.
like the Microsoft chatbot? I think that was the
Yeah,
one.
it was something. It was something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like where they just skewed its experience index to
Oh.
a point where it just starts
But
being
the-
horrible.
But that was funny because they launched that in multiple regions. The U.S. one was horrible. The Japanese one just talked about like the weather and Hello Kitty.
That might actually be really nice. Like, that's all it talks about. The weather and Hello Kitty.
You know,
I could get on board with that.
yeah. Nobody said anything. It's just all inoffensive stuff. It was kind of hilarious.
Wow.
I am all in on this one, just like the sumo drumming thing. I am all in. I am the guy who goes to Disney to go to the haunted house. That's my
nice.
favorite, one of my favorite rides of all time. I love that ride. I can't get enough of
Haunted Mansion,
It's-
baby. Ooh, yeah.
Oh my god, I love that. It's so ancient and archaic, but I can't. I just love it. And this just speaks to me. I mean, just having like just being able, and the fact that I can actually do this in September is going to be like, I'm like, take my money, please. You know?
Yeah.
Take my money.
Yeah.
I would like to crash in on the Japanese version of itself, just to see
Yeah.
how it kind of looks.
Works.
Yeah.
Just to know that when it launches in September that we could participate in, that see how much it changes for an international market versus
That's
the
all
Japanese market.
Yeah. It's interesting because Japanese horror is a very specific thing.
Yeah.
And
You say Junji Ito?
oh, yeah. So yeah, and I do love the idea that these that you're basically working through a story. It's role playing, really. And you've got this concept that you got this this ghost hunter who's all excited about ghosts, and he bought this painting, and then, wait, is that moving? What's going on?
Night Gallery.
Yeah, there we go. I think it's really cool. I've always found it interesting that idea in Japan that you get scared in the summer to cool down. That you go to all of the theme parks will have their haunted house stuff in like July and August. And that's
unbearably hot and humid as hell, and you put people in costumes. Oh, that's great. Nothing like a nylon, bag to sit yourself in and stew.
Yeah,
delicious.
But I guess when you don't have Halloween, right? That's not a thing in Japan. So do it whenever you want. Why not?
Well, see, Kira is launching the Halloween initiative in Japan.
Oh,
so
nice.
She's working hard on that as we speak. She's
Good
going
fight.
to be the representative. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We figure if they've got Valentine's Day and White Day,
true.
then
White
why
Day,
couldn't
absolutely.
you know what I mean? Halloween. I think
Well,
talking with my stepfather's niece, and how in Australia nobody 20 years ago had Halloween. It just really wasn't kind of a thing. But
Right, sure.
the prevalence of cable in most Australian households and American media pressure at things like the Simpsons Halloween special gained traction, and people got more interested in Halloween, and more kind of Halloween-y things started happening. And then now they have like full-on almost American Halloween.
Wow.
And it's like, oh,
well, I
there you go.
know Harajuku has done Halloween themed costume walks, right, and stuff like that every year, where they're like, this is sort of costume day, International Costume Day, Halloween.
Yeah.
So everyone's gonna get decked out and just walk up and down the street and so forth. And I think like for quite a few years, the proprietors would hand out candy or whatever. So yeah,
Here's a mochi for you. Here's a mochi for you.
Well,
So, yeah.
it would be interesting to see what the translation would be for the Japanese to actually have this as a major holiday thing. People to go out and do that, because they have such interesting twists on holidays like Valentine's Day. Not only do you have Valentine's Day, but The other person gets chocolate too on White Day. So, that's kind of interesting.
Mhm.
And my favorite, though, interpretation of holiday traditions in Japan is KFC for Christmas.
Yeah.
I
Christmas.
love the idea of that.
Nothing says Christmas like KFC.
But it's a thing. It's what
Absolutely.
they do. You have to pre-order meals for Christmas.
Wow.
Kentucky Fried Christmas.
Kentucky Fried Chicken, presented by the Colonel.
Mhm.
But so how would I would just be very curious to see Halloween and the fact that Japanese horror is so different.
Yeah.
What that
Well,
would look like.
And I mean, how many yokai do you have to call on, right, to begin with?
Yeah.
7-8 million.
So you got that to begin with.
Those are the ones that are cataloged, actually.
Right, yeah. I wonder what
And
they give
that
out.
makes Halloween so. Halloween would be so broad. It's
Yeah.
like, you don't just have witches and goblins and, like monsters.
Avengers.
You have like an entirely huge cultural landscape of Oni and yokai and all kinds of crazy ass monsters. That's like, wow, cool.
Yeah, I wonder what you'd give out, because Japan doesn't really have a. I'm trying to think of a lot
Senbei.
of. I mean, there aren't a lot of like wrapped individual candies in Japan that I can
Senbei.
think of. What's senbei?
Crackers, rice crackers.
Oh,
Senbei.
right. Yeah, that's true. You're
Individually
right.
wrapped senbei.
Mhm. Yeah. Nope. That's what it would be. Totally.
That's super easy. They come and
Mhm.
I've got some in the cupboard downstairs where it's 2 little senbei crackers, salt on one side, sugar on the other, 2 little crackers per package, nicely, cleanly, hygienically packaged. Boop, there you go.
Yep. That'd be very interesting to see if we.
Or fugu. Oh, I'd take fugu. But downtown somewhere to a really expensive restaurant, be like, "Hi, trick or treat, fugu, free fugu, please, in a bag."
Wait 45 minutes, and we'll be out with your fugu.
I want one done by the master chef. I don't want the practice blowfish
Yeah.
because this will be my last Halloween.
Yeah. Well, you think this is a country with traditionally very safe streets. If any country is going to have kids running around in costumes, getting treats, you think it would be Japan. Totally.
And with the added pressure that if you kids misbehave, we're going to report it to your school.
True.
And then your school's going to call your parents. Yeah. You're not going to have Hell Night the same kind of way in Japan.
Yeah. Pranks involve just, mispronouncing a word slightly. Like, that's as far as it goes. Nothing crazier than that. Oh, it's hilarious. Cool. All right. That is the news.